A huge thank you to patron Tina Harkins for suggesting today's video topic. If you want to suggest a topic for next Wednesday's Name Explain video, all you have to do is support Name Explain on Patreon for $1 a month. Find out more by visiting patreon.com/NameExplain, which will be linked down below. Anyway, our fingers are deeply important to us, and most of us use them in pretty much every aspect of our lives. We use them to interact with the world around us, and they can play a vital role in communication. Various hand gestures range from very positive to incredibly negative. Certain fingers have picked up connotations for themselves too, and of course each of our 5 fingers have names, and yeah, for ease's sake I'm calling all 5 of these digits fingers, even though there's the whole is the thumb a finger debate. You may be angry at me, but I'm sure we'll manage. In this day and age, all of our fingers have one name that is more popular than the rest of them. That name is more or less their de facto name. This however was not always the case. Over the course of human history and languages, we've given these fingers all different kinds of names, from ones that aren't too dissimilar to the names we use today, to names that seem extremely odd and silly to our modern tastes. So let's look at the many names we have given the appendages that live at the end of our hands, the things that make us so distinctly human. And the digit that is seen as the most human has to be the thumb. Thumbs are what allow us to grasp things so easily, allowing us to hold things like pens which drove human creativity forwards, as well as guns which have led to some of the darkest moments in human history. They also allow us to play video games too, something I feel is equally important as pens and everything else we do with our hands. It's also worth mentioning here that not everyone has full control over their thumbs and fingers for a whole variety of reasons. Thankfully, these people are able to enjoy many of these things too. I always love seeing adaptive and accessible video game controllers, which allow anyone to play video games regardless of dexterity. But back to that word of thumb, which most of us use for this digit. This word is believed to come from the older Germanic word of thulmen, which means things like to swell, or stout, or thick. This is most likely because the thumb is much stouter / swollen / thicker than the rest of our fingers. The thumb has gone by a variety of other names too, however. In Latin it was called the pollux, which means something like to be strong. I guess it's the strongest of the fingers. A Kurdish name for the thumb has it translating into meaning the ram finger. This is in relation to the animal of the ram, which is often seen as stout and strong too. It also has names which place it as the most important finger. These kinds of names also relate to family dynamics too, with it being known as the mother or father finger, the older brother, and even the grandfather figure. I love the idea that our fingers are like a little family, and the thumb being this wise old stout grandparent type. Though perhaps the name we don't really need to bring back for this thumb is the title of the lice killer, a name which derives from its use in squishing head lice. That's not as cute. It's also worth noting that while thumbs are often seen as the thing that differs us from the rest of the animal kingdom, other animals do have thumbs too. This ranges from our relatives with the great apes, pandas which use them to grasp bamboo, squirrels which have little nubs or thumbs, and even certain tree frogs have thumb-like digits too. Yet as we move across the hand, we arrive at the index finger. This is the one you can hold up along with your thumb in the shape of an L on your forehead. We mainly use it however to point at things and guide others to things we feel are important. It's from this pointing use of this finger as to where that word of index comes from. It derives from the Latin indicor, which means to point out. This comes from the words of in and dicere, which mean upon and proclaim respectively, meaning it truly means the finger that we declare upon. It seems like the word of index was used first for fingers and was later applied to a collection of books / information in general, probably because we use our index fingers to point at these kinds of indexes. While this name is the most used term for it in English, it is also known as the pointer finger, which means pretty much the same thing as index finger, but in much plainer English. It is also known as the first finger or the forefinger. This is because many don't see the thumb as a finger, which we've already talked about, so they see this instead as the first true finger on our hands. Some medieval texts refer to it as the teacher finger or the greeter finger. The teacher name I imagine comes from the idea that teachers point to things with it, while the greeter finger name might come from an old way of greeting someone by wagging this finger at them, I suppose. It's also become known as the shooter / trigger finger due to its use in firing weapons ranging from bows to guns, and it's also been known as the scythe for a reason we aren't entirely too sure about, but my theory is that it comes from the way we can curl it to look like a scythe. In Muslim cultures, it is known as the prayer finger, due to its use in the Shahada oath. Though my favourite name for it has to be the pot licker, which is pretty self-explanatory. But then we have the middle finger in the middle of the pack. It's pretty easy to understand why this one is called the middle finger, right? It's in the middle of them all. While this name isn't too interesting, this finger's image is way more interesting. It has gained notoriety for itself as the finger we point at people in anger or rage. This is a gesture we've been making at those we dislike for a seriously long time, with evidence of it dating back to ancient Greece. It's theorized the lone middle finger is meant to represent the male reproductive organ, which also has a history of being shown to people in anger or rage. This gesture has a collection of names too, the oddest of those being flipping the birds. The flipping part of this name makes sense, as you flip the finger upwards. But why the birds? It's believed to come from a mid-19th century expression, give the big bird, which meant to hiss at someone like a goose when they come on stage. It was linked to a music hall and vaudeville acts. The name for this vocal dislike of someone was applied to this hand gesture too. Back to names for this actual finger, however, as opposed to the gesture we make with it. The Romans also knew it as the digitus impudicus and the digitus obscenus, which means the shameless finger and the obscene finger respectively. These names once again come from the rudeness of this finger, though it has had other names which link more of the length and centralness of it. Names like the long finger, the tall finger, and the halfway finger. It's even been referred to as the tall man, which once again comes from anthropomorphizing our fingers, as well as being known as the high grass, which relates to the idea of our fingers looking like grass and the middle finger being the tallest blade. Beyond the middle finger, we have the ring finger. This digit has picked up less offensive connotations, thankfully. It's the finger linked with love and the heart, stemming from an old theory that there's a vein in this finger which goes all the way to the heart. This idea isn't exactly true, but it stood the test of time for long enough for people to still place wedding rings on this finger due to its believed connotation to the heart. This is why it's known as the ring finger, as people put their wedding rings on them. What hand the ring goes on actually varies between cultures. Some places it goes on the left, while other places it goes on the right. This heart connotation carried on, however, into other odd names for this finger. In the past, this finger was very much linked with healing and medicine, with people thinking that treatment to this finger could cure all sorts of things due to its connection with the heart. It became known as the doctor finger, the healing finger, the heart finger, and even the leech finger, due to the old medical use of leeches. Though perhaps the oddest name this finger has had is no name at all. Sounds a bit odd, I know, but this finger has also been known as the nameless finger. This lack of name for this finger has been found in Europe, various Native American cultures, and even in China. There's a few reasons why we think this finger was named nameless. It may come from the fact that this finger was seen as so important due to health and marriage that it ought not to be named. Or it might even come from the fact that this finger doesn't really have all that much use, so it didn't really need a name either. Then finally we have the little finger, the smallest of all our fingers, which sits at the end of our hands. I think its main purpose is to be stuck out when drinking tea, or maybe exists to be held to our lips when we're feeling especially evil. Anyway, obviously it's called the little finger because it's littler than the rest of them, yet this finger has another name that might actually be more well known than the term of little finger: pinky. This term of pinky actually has nothing to do with the colour pink. It instead came to us via the Dutch. Their name for the little finger is just the word of pink. Meanwhile, their word for the colour pink is rosa. The E suffix is probably just a diminutive, due to the fact it's the smallest of the fingers. This digit has had other names, however. Many of these names relate to its smaller stature, and like the thumb, it has some family-based names too, with the likes of the baby finger, the child finger, the daughter finger, and the last born finger. It has also been known as the sparrow finger, due to it being small like a little sparrow, though the best name for it has to be its Latin name of auriculeus, which means the ear finger. This is because for so long, it has been our go-to finger for fishing all kinds of gunk out of our ears. Seriously, who hasn't had a good prod around in there with their little finger? Fingers have had all kinds of interesting, weird and wonderful names given to them, though something that hasn't fared as well are the southern cousins of the fingers, our toes. Toes are super important in helping us stand upright and walk around, but they haven't played an as vital role in human history, so it makes sense as to why they haven't had many names. Often we've used names that parallel our fingers, like calling them the middle toe, the ring toe, and even the pinky toe. The most unique name for a toe out there is seemingly the hallux, which is the fancy name for the big toe, coming from its Latin name of allus. Toes really haven't gotten the nomenclature love that fingers have. Poor guys. I did do some googling for toe nicknames, and a site called nickfinder.com included some wonderful ones like Toby-Wan Kenobi, Slipper Grippers, Toe Biden, and Toe Mama. I seriously wish I could take credit for these. Of course, none of these are widely used in language, so why don't we change that? Let me know some good nicknames you can think of for toes down in the comments below, and let's see if we can make any of them as prominent as the many names we use for our fingers. Name Explain depends on viewers like yourself supporting the channel financially on Patreon, so a huge thank you to everyone who does. Donating just $1 a month helps the channel amazingly and gets you bonuses including ad-free videos, exclusive content, the power to request ideas to be made into actual Name Explain videos, and your name at the end of the video with all these awesome people. Visit patreon.com/Name Explain or click the link down below to find out how you too can support the channel. Thank you. Thanks for reaching the end of the video. Why not watch another and subscribe to keep up to date on all things Name Explain. You can find myself on Instagram where I'm NameExplainYT, and join the Facebook group Friends of Name Explain to talk with myself and other name nerds. All that will be linked down below. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and once again, thank you all so much.